Hi, I'm Paul Bailey, and we're going to talk about logistic regressions. So, logistic regressions works in Ed Survey using logit.sdf, or you can do probit using probit.sdf. And here I'm showing an example of looking at if the person has education or training in the last 12 months. So, a success in the terms of the binary regression would be yes, and the opposite would be no. So, that would be a zero for the case of the logit. And then using the explanatory variables, looking at the bottom of age and 10-year bands, the parent's highest level of education, and then also their literacy score on PX. So this function is going to deal with the fact that that has plausible values um, and calculate the statistics correctly. So you'll notice in the logit.sdf call that there's this capital I function, and what that's doing is it evaluates it, and then it. I like to do it this way because now we have the definition of success right in the call, and we know what a one is versus a zero. We're saying, okay, a one is a yes. I can then call summary on that. I turned on rounding the output just to get slightly fewer significant digits and make it fit more easily on the slide. So that's something you can do for making your reports also. Just a sidebar there, but here I see up at the top, just like regression, I get information about the full data set n and the number of observations used in this regression. So again, there's listwise deletion. Um, and this is again replicate weighting. And just like with regression, I have coefficients, standard errors, t-statistics, degrees of freedom for the same reason I had them for linear regression, which is that it's a survey. And so in a survey, we get different numbers of degrees of freedom depending on how dispersed a covariate is. And then if I wanted to ask what is a joint significance test, or if I wanted to do a joint significance test, I can use a walled test. So this is important because for surveys, it's a little harder. Likelihood ratio tests are not necessarily relevant for a survey. And so the walled test is our primary tool for answering a joint hypothesis test. So here we're testing, setting all of the age coefficients to zero so that we're moving that variable essentially from the regression. And then we get a warning about there not being PSU and strata variables, which is correct for the public German data. And so because of that, there would usually be an F test if that was available. In this case, there's only a chi-square test. So I'll let you look into the assumptions necessary for the chi-square. They're a little more strict than the F test. Um, but we get a p-value here that it has quite a few zeros before we get a digit. Um, and that is logistic regression.